See myself in the floating home. See the light come over now. See myself in the floating rain. I watch hope come over me. Here we are in the pouring home. I watch the light man for the cone. I watch the light move across the screen. I watch the light come over me. Here we are now going to the east side. I pick up my friends and we start to ride. We ride all night, yeah, we ride all day. The sun may come, Lord, the sun may stay. Here we are now going to the west side. Weapons in hand, maybe go for a ride. The sun may come, Lord, the sun may stay. Watching out for the sunny day.
Hey everybody, welcome to Box Office Addict, my weekly podcast, whatever the fuck this is, where I look at the weekend numbers and I kind of just have a discussion and analysis of where movies are at right now. This is a return to Box Office Addict being live, as this is a very special event, as we are covering the most talked about movie of the year in a lot of ways, even though this is not the best opening weekend of the year. And it's not even like the second best opening weekend of the year. We're going to be talking about the opening for Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, although Rise, I think, is used rather ironically, considering this is a steep decline in the opening from both previous Star Wars movies in this trilogy. This is a huge drop from Force Awakens, which is expected, but this is an even bigger surprise that this is a big drop from The Last Jedi. So this confirms a few things that we were wondering about. The love of Star Wars post The Last Jedi. Now, when Solo bombed, And that was an $84 million opening weekend. Everybody said, okay, that's just because nobody wanted a Han Solo movie. It came out too close to The Last Jedi. Of course, it didn't open as well. Of course, it didn't do well. Now, here we are with this movie, which, you know, is a couple years just about after Solo. And here we are with a $175 million opening weekend. Going into Friday, the estimates were at 195. After that, they were at 193. By the end of the weekend, now it is at 179, is what some sites are saying, 180, but I think this 175 is accurate. It'll probably be adjusted up to something like 177, 178. So this has almost dropped 100 million from the opening of Force Awakens, which was much more hyped. And it's dropped, what did Last Jedi open at? What was it, 220 million? So, yeah, it's like, what is that, $45 million that it's dropped to this. So this is just very evident. Now, the reviews didn't help. This movie did not get good reviews going in. The buzz was bad. The marketing for this film was rather poor. I'm pretty sure Last Jedi opened at 220 million. I don't think it opened at 232 million. I would put money down that it was 220. I remember specifically, but maybe we can look it up. Hold on. And double check this. My memory is usually pretty good about this stuff, though. Yeah, the opening weekend was 220 million. They say on here the budget was 317 million. The international gross was 712 million, and the worldwide gross was 1,332 million. Now let's go look at The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens opened at 247 million on a $245 million budget. It made 936 mil domestic, which was huge. It made 1.1 billion internationally and almost 2.1 billion worldwide. Now let's look at Rogue One, which is another release in the Disney canon, which opened to 155 million and made 1,056 million. And then, of course, let's look at Solo, which Solo opened to 84 million on a $275 million budget and grossed $392 million worldwide, which made it the first Star Wars film to be an outright bomb. Oh, hold on. I really don't like Box Office Mojo's format. It used to be so much easier to look at other movies. So here we are. This is a huge drop, man. There's really no way to look at this as anything but a negative. I know some people are going to try to spin this and say, well, hey, it's still a big opening at 175 million. But this is not a good sign for this movie. I would say that the word of mouth is not good on this. I'd say it was front loaded going into the weekend. And I think that this is very reflective of where Disney is at. Now, don't be wrong, $175 million is a good opening weekend, but when you think about how Endgame opened, when you think about that The Lion King opened better than this, when you think about the performances of things like The Joker, or just Joker, or other major movies that have come out this year, this is a disappointment across the board because the budget for this movie has to at least be $300 million. They at least have $150 million in the marketing. And right now it looks like, unless the international numbers are huge, I don't see this surpassing The Last Jedi. Certainly domestically, this will not reach the $620 million that film did. And worldwide, I don't think it'll reach the $1.3 billion. So the wave of nostalgia and love for this franchise has steadily dropped from movie to movie, and I think The Last Jedi is definitely reflective of that. Now, remember on Last Jedi, the Rotten Tomatoes, and there was the audience score, and then I remember Deadline specifically did an article that pointed out that science proved through CinemaScore is that's scientifically accurate, that people loved the movie and that it had a great reception and that it in no way affected Star Wars. Then here we are 2 years later and Deadline's writing articles saying that Last Jedi affected the reception of this series. Not just that, the arguments over Star Wars over the last 2 years, the growing counterculture and videos on YouTube that literally have millions of views and articles that have been written reflecting this. And people thought that, oh, it wouldn't affect the box office. This was the Justice League argument. This was the argument for a lot of franchise. Well, here it is. Okay, the reviews aren't great for this fucking movie, and the fucking box office isn't that great either when compared to what came before, which shows that people lost interest over time. Last Jedi made less money than the previous film, and everyone said, okay, it's the middle film. Of course it made less money. Now this film is making even less money than that. So you can't tell me that it was the middle film thing, because here's the final film in the entire saga. When you look at how Revenge of the Sith opened compared to like Attack of the Clones, or that Return of the Jedi made more money than Empire Strikes Back, at least domestically. Worldwide, I think Empire still is the higher grossing film. So there you go. I mean, there the fuck it is. So what caused this? Well, one, definitely The Last Jedi, Disney's horrible handling, Rian Johnson, and now he responded to the criticism. Mark Hamill out there publicly criticizing the decisions made. Solo being a bad decision. That killed the brand. Releasing a Star Wars film every year. That took away the novelty of Star Wars. It was really exciting when Force Awakens came out because we hadn't had a Star Wars film in a long time. That was not the case. And Rogue One had that too. And Rogue One had a premise. That was not the case by the time Solo came around. You had just seen a Star Wars film, and that's not the case with this film. People are hyped about even right now, The Mandalorian's on Disney Plus. There's so much Star Wars shit out there that what's the big deal about this movie coming out? Who gives a fuck if it's the end of the Skywalker saga? Before we look at its box office and break it all down, let's look at some other films real quick and see where they're at. Uncut Gems had an unfortunate drop of 56% and is at $1 million. A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood is steadily dropping, 60% drop. Ford v Ferrari passed 100 million this week and 101 million domestic. That puts it up to 192 million worldwide on a budget of 97 million. Black Christmas is a bomb. Queen and Slim is about to wrap up somewhere around 40 million. Bombshell had a really bad opening weekend of 5 million in 1,400 theaters for a very, supposedly hyped movie. Also, I guess we have to talk about Cats. That's what we're talking about. Knives Out. Cats is almost more interesting. Knives Out is at 89 mil domestic and 185 million worldwide. And of course, everyone's going to say, look at Knives Out. Rian Johnson, critically acclaimed and a huge hit. He's a genius. JJ's a hack. Let's talk about Cats, though. Holy shit, I didn't even think about Cats. An abysmal opening weekend. The budget for this movie is $95 million. Cats, the musical, Andrew Lloyd Webber, has grossed $4 billion worldwide and is one of the most successful pieces of media of all time. Not just a musical, but in general, it's one of the most successful things that's ever been made in movies, music, or anything like that. $4 billion. The trailers released for this were not well received. And by the way, Tom Hooper fucking sucks. I hated Les Miserables. The King's Speech is overrated. How the fuck did he beat David Fincher for Best Director? And here we are with this movie where everyone hated the trailers. Everyone was saying how bizarre the special effects were, that they're even changing the special effects going into post-production, and they're even releasing a new version of this at Universal. Why didn't they just have people in costumes? Why did they go with this weird Uncanny Valley mocap CGI thing? But you really got to think about this. Cats, one of the most successful musicals of all time. One of the most successful things of all time, really. You have this big name cast. Taylor Swift is in this movie, for fuck's sakes. You have all these hit songs. Musicals are doing well now. The Greatest Showman was a big hit. Les Miserables was a big hit. A few years ago, it made like 450 million. La La Land made over 400 million worldwide. And here you are with this film that's just based off one of the most successful ones ever made by this director who's won Best Director at the Academy Awards, made a successful musical adaptation, and here he is with a $95 million budget. This is almost a $100 million budget, not including the marketing, and your 3-day opening during the holiday season is 6.5 million. 10.9 million worldwide. This is one of the biggest bombs of the year and one of the worst reviewed films of the year. This is a huge hit to Universal, who did not need something this disastrous. This is a clusterfuck in all ways. I mean, holy fucking shit. Bad marketing. I mean, that goes a long way. But let's see, what do you guys think? Your movie sucks and Cats was great. Why didn't they just make Cats an animated movie? Well, originally Steven Spielberg was going to make an animated version of Cats. in the 80s with Amblin, and Amblin actually co-produced this, but he never made that movie. And I agree with you, an animated version would have been a better idea. I think it's probably so bad it's good. Um, but yeah, this is a horrible opening weekend. Internationally, this is a bomb. This will not make 100 million worldwide. They are going to lose millions of dollars on this. They should have never made this movie. Cats hasn't really been relevant for a long time. When it was really popular, a big reason that it did well, and same thing with Phantom of the Opera, honestly, was that New York was a shithole for quite a bit of time, and it was very dangerous. And then it got cleaned up at some point in the late 80s, and New York's actually fairly safe for its population now. And Broadway came back in the 80s, and Andrew Lloyd Webber, who was a hack, capitalized this. He is no Stephen Sondheim. And Phantom of the Opera was a huge hit, and Cats was a huge hit and made like $1 billion. And all of these people love it. And don't be wrong, Cats is pure theater. It's people in costumes singing and dancing. It's abstract. I'm not going to act like Cats doesn't have a concept, but it was very much a product of its time and was successful due to that. Where in today's world, I don't think anybody wanted to see this. I don't think a Cats movie was a good idea in 2019, and obviously the box office reflects that. But if you were going to make a Cats movie, they picked the wrong director, who is not suited for this, who is not a visualist. They picked the wrong approach visually to make this film with the way they did the CGI. And the songs to this aren't even really that like catching people or anything like that, even though Memory, All Alone in the Moonlight, that was all big like years ago. So yeah, 3,300 theaters and an opening weekend that bad. Of course this film was going to do bad, but I even thought it would open better than this. In my head, even though I thought it would get bad reviews, I'm like, well, it'll probably still open to like 20 million just because it's Cats. But holy shit, people did not want to see this fucking movie. Speaking of a musical that was successful, though, Frozen is at 386 mil domestic and 1,103 million worldwide. The previous film made 1.2 billion, and I believe had an international gross of 800 million. Excuse me. So 1.2 billion worldwide looks like it's possible here. Although this film is slowing down, but with the holidays, it should be able to pass the original film's 400 million domestic. And I'm assuming it will reach about the same box office as the first film, although I don't know if it'll really surpass it, because as you see, it made 12.3 million this weekend. Jumanji: The Next Level had a surprisingly steep drop, 55%. That's not as good as the previous film, $26 million. It has made $311 million worldwide with a $125 million budget. $500 million seems to be a lock. I do not think this will make the $400 million that the first film in this new series made, and I don't think it'll make the $962 million that film made. I still think this film will be successful, but it is clearly not catching on with audiences the way the first film did, and that's probably just because it's not as good of a film as the first one, and not as big of a surprise, and they kind of did the same thing over again. It's not a bomb by any means, though, but you really think about The Rock with this and Hobbs and Shaw, it's sort of reflective of both of these things, that instead of something new coming out that The Rock could be in that would make money, he's just attaching himself to a sequel to something that was already successful previously. Where maybe they should have been trying to make the next Jumanji the next level. But you can't blame Sony for, Jumanji Walk into the Jungle, you can't blame Sony for doing this. So now let's get to the big film of the weekend, Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. This film made $198 million internationally, 175 mil domestic. It's at 373 million worldwide, which is actually one of the best worldwide openings of all time. But here's the thing. When you have a film that opened at 247 million, then another film that opened at 220 million, and then this film opens so much lower, that just really reflects where this franchise is at. Also, this isn't that much better of an opening than Rogue One. And I don't know if domestically it will make... Rogue One ended up at 532 million. I don't know if this makes 532 million. I think a good argument could be made that this tops out at like 450 million. And I know the budget for this is somewhere around $300 million, especially with the reshoot. So we're looking at right now a worldwide total, at least of right now. We don't know with second weekend and all that. We're looking at something of like 1 billion, 1.1 billion, maybe 1.2 billion. Now here's the thing though, it's Disney. They had The Lion King this year. It made 1.6 billion. Endgame made almost $3 billion. Frozen 2 is going to make $1.2 billion. Disney had 6 films this year make $1 billion. So, in that sense, they really can't lose with this movie. If it does just make $1.2 billion, it will still be it'll still make a profit. It'll still be one of the most successful films of the year, but it will not be the most successful film of the year. And this is the craziest thing. The highest grossing film of the year The Force Awakens came out was Force Awakens. The highest grossing film of 2017 was The Last Jedi, and both of those films on Deadline were picked as the most profitable films that year. This will not be the highest grossing film of the year. This will not be the second highest grossing film of the year. This will not reach The Lion King's box office, and a good debate could be made that this will not be the third highest grossing film of the year. So of this new Star Wars series, that it outside of Rogue One and that of the new trilogy, this will be the first one that is not the highest grossing film of the year that it came out. This is a big hit to J.J. Abrams, who hasn't made a movie since Force Awakens, which put him over the top after the first Star Trek being successful and Into Darkness having a disappointing box office return. Mission Impossible 3 was a very disappointing film financially. Super 8 did well, and here he is and he returns, a major director, and his movie doesn't open as well as the previous film, and it looks like it's not going to come anywhere close to The Force Awakens. So this really, I think, knocks J.J. Abrams down a few pegs. It's certainly not good for the cast. I don't think Daisy Ridley has much of a career ahead of her, despite everyone thinking she's going to be a movie star. I think Adam Driver and John Boyega and Oscar Isaac all have a good shot. I'm not saying this because she's a woman. I just think this is what she had, and you get kind of stuck in a Star Wars role when you play it. This isn't good for Disney because it looks bad on them, even though it doesn't matter ultimately, but it looks bad when you look at the success of the Marvel films. And this just looks like they mishandled Star Wars. They had this thing that opened like Infinity War, and now it's opening on par with like Captain America Civil War. Only this far in. They just purchased this 5 years ago. They purchased Marvel a decade ago, and they're making that kind like $3 billion. Think about Black Panther. They just purchased this 5 years ago, and they're already getting diminishing returns. So this was a huge. I don't see how it doesn't hit 1 billion just because it's already opened to 373 million. I mean, it maybe won't reach $1 billion, but it's unlikely because you have to assume 400 mil domestic is a lock with that opening, unless the drops in the second, third weekend are like 65-70%. Last Jedi second week it was 67%. And yeah, I just internationally would have to drop. I mean, if this made less than $1 billion, it would be fucking embarrassing. It really would be. Well, Sweeney Todd's technically an opera, I feel. Hey, Pat, I've been wondering if it would benefited the new trilogy to have made Thrawn the main villain instead of Snoke or Kylo. I think anything would have benefited the new trilogy. Have you seen the new Lupin the Third CG movie trailer? No, I have not. I would like to see it, though. Why didn't they make Cats a CG film? That's a good question. Why is this live action CGI fetish in Hollywood? I'm not really sure. That's another good question. I think they think people are into it more than they are because of like the Planet of the Apes movies. Or Drat, it certainly doesn't deserve to reach 1 billion. They could have made Endgame numbers. I totally agree to you. Yes, I agree Chris Terrio's a hack. Completely. He is at hack status now with this movie. No question. He has not written anything impressive since Argo, which I'm starting to think Ben Affleck was a big key to that movie's screenplay being so good. And Chris Terrio got way too much credit for that movie. I mean, the script to Argo isn't even that great. What makes Argo good is the acting, the direction, the pacing of it, the editing, the cinematography. It's a really well-made thriller. It's not like that's a terrific screenplay. It's a good movie, but that screenplay is not... I mean, I don't even think he deserved an Oscar for that movie. But you're right, this could have done better. This should have... I mean, theoretically, the second film, yeah, it should have made a little bit less than Force Awakens. Maybe 1.5, 1.6 billion. This movie, on the other hand, should have made 1.8 billion, if not more. Imagine if everyone had loved The Last Jedi, and this movie was loved. if it had been handled the way like the Russos handled the Marvel films. You also got to think about this. Jurassic World: The Fallen Kingdom, the sequel to Jurassic World, made 1.3 billion after the film before that made 1.6 billion. So people are liking that franchise more, because I would argue the third Jurassic World film is going to make 1.3 1.2 billion. That was a surprise success, and it made like 400 million domestically. This film is like performing worse than that film, just by comparison at what it is. So that's the craziest thing about this, that this film, yeah, no, the yellow lightsaber at the end is fucking ridiculous. That is one of the stupidest fucking things. Well, yeah, but Natalie Portman was already a kind of a star. She was in The Professional, and she was known for that movie, the Beautiful Girls, and a few other movies. Like, she didn't become famous because of Star Wars. She was already a known actress, and Natalie Portman really wasn't in a lot of hit movies outside of V for Vendetta. It wasn't until Black Swan came out that she really made a comeback, and I don't think Daisy Ridley is Natalie Portman. I mean, she was in The Murder on the Orient Express. I'm not saying her career is dead or anything like that, but I don't know. This is a bad sign for everybody. I mean, if I was, it's actually just embarrassing that this movie opened like this. I mean, this is like worst case scenario, it opening to 175 million. This is like as low as it could have possibly went. That means a lot of people did not want to go see this movie. And I could feel it in the air. I knew it for weeks that people weren't hyped to go see this movie. I had a friend at work say, "Oh, I see you with 2 lightsabers. I gotta go see it." And then that same person, I asked them, like, "Hey, what'd you think of the movie?" And they're like, "It was all right." That's how most people seem to be taking this movie, and clearly the word of mouth wasn't good. It does have an A- cinema score, which is science, but I don't think the word of mouth is going to be good on this. Yeah, I wish Oscar Isaac would have never associated himself with this bullshit, because he's terrific in everything outside of these movies. Like, I'm really pissed off about poor John Boyega. He really feels like he could have been the guy that carried this franchise as Finn, because a lot of fans seem to like Finn. I think the word of mouth will carry it over the top. It's a crowd pleaser. I don't agree, Will, because I think that would reflect in the opening weekend, because it dropped steadily on Saturday, and they're estimating it to drop Sunday. And I agree that it's a crowd-pleasing film, but you also have to acknowledge that it's a very weird film, and a very poorly edited film, and a confusing film. If you're just a casual audience member and you go see this film after Last Jedi, because you're a Last Jedi fan, this film shits on a lot of the stuff that Rian Johnson did in Last Jedi, and it even has lines of dialogue that contradict things that are in The Last Jedi and mocks The Last Jedi. So let's say a bunch of Last Jedi fans go see this movie. This movie's telling you that it didn't like The Last Jedi, and if you're a Force Awakens fan, this feels like a third film that didn't have a middle film. And if you like both of those movies, this is the worst edited film out of those 3. And a very sloppy film in that sense. And I don't think people are going to respond to it that way. I mean, like, I found it to be entertaining, but I don't think word of mouth is going to be good just because of the drop from Friday to Saturday. It should have increased over the weekend if the word of mouth was good. I would say the word of mouth is mixed. I think a lot of people hate this movie, and I think a lot of people who like this movie think it's okay. Yeah, but see, you say that that's not necessarily true, because they get a lot of exciting movies. This is like the Transformers franchise, like, people don't go to Star Wars to just see something exciting. They go to get a certain type of movie and to get certain aspects of that movie. And I don't think this let's think about It Chapter 2. Overall, it's a genuinely, like, big budget, entertaining blockbuster, but it made so much less than the previous film, and the drops were big. I feel like this is very much in the same vein as that. I don't think that general audiences can only do so much for the box office of a film. And what's over the top even mean? There is no over the top. Even if this film does perform well, it's still going to fall way below Force Awakens and fall below The Last Jedi. So there really is no over the top for this movie. There's just disappointment. I mean, 1.1 billion, 1.2 billion is a disappointment for the final film in the Star Wars series. It just is. I mean, Disney fucked this up. They fucked it up. They left money on the table. It Chapter 2 had pacing that general audiences don't respond well to. I don't think general audiences are going to respond to this either. I think they're going to find a lot of it goofy and confusing. I think a lot of us who understand it know the reshoots and the lore. I think a general audience member going to see this is going to be fucking confused. And be like, well, wait, what about this thing in The Last Jedi? I've already just talked to people in my life that are fucking confused. I think you're just very optimistic about the Star Wars stuff. I like your positivity, but it's this is not good. That's a pretty bad worldwide opening for this series, especially when you consider that this was a very expensive movie. So if this movie had cost $150 million, this would look great, but they put a lot of money into this. I'm going off the audience well, that's not a very good indicator. You got to go off the math here, and the math is saying from the Saturday to Friday drop that the word of mouth is not great. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's mixed. I'm not saying that this movie has bad word of mouth, because if I was going off my theater, it was half empty and nobody was laughing during the movie. But, that's not a sign of what people think overall. I think if the word of mouth was better, it would have had a better Saturday. Especially considering it's the holidays right now and movies overperform during this time there. Now, here's the thing. This movie will get a boost on next weekend because of Christmas and New Year. So this movie should bounce back a little bit in its second weekend. But then come January, I really don't know what's going to happen. Thank you for the super chat, Vash, the ashtray. I appreciate it very much. That is very useful right now in my life. I really need some money after Christmas shopping. For the record, I thought it was okay. Abram knows how to direct blockbusters, and he should stay far away from a screenplay. Terrio too. Were you disappointed, though, as The Last Jedi fan, that they didn't follow up on The Last Jedi, and would you have preferred that Rian Johnson wrote the screenplay and continued the things that he was establishing? Because one of the big things in The Last Jedi was that anyone could be the hero, and lineage didn't matter. He established that Rey's parents don't matter, and the little kid at the end has the Force. And it was showing that anyone can have the Force, anyone can be the hero. That was also have to do with Rostico's character. This movie destroys that. We don't get a follow-up with the little boy who had the Force and the kids. Rey is related to somebody powerful, and that explains her powers. And it doesn't feel like anyone can be the hero. It feels like you have to be a member of one of these families to be the hero. Rian Johnson tried to expand the universe, and this made it small again. I mean, if I was a Last Jedi fan, that particularly would upset me because that betrays the theme of The Last Jedi. And goes backwards with the entire Star Wars franchise. It takes it back to like the prequels. Apparently, Disney told JJ that either will never or can't release the original theatrical releases of the OT. Yeah, that's what I've heard. I don't get that. I think George Lucas put that in a contract. Yes, it is schizophrenic. It's the movies don't flow together well. Abrams tried to have the best of both worlds. Yes, I think Johnson should have at least stayed on as a writer. Yes, there are things I particularly did not like. Yeah, because I gotta wonder, because I didn't like Last Jedi and you liked it, so I gotta wonder if this was fucking weird that this movie just did not follow up on that stuff. Like, it followed up on the Rey-Kylo Force connection thing, and that was cool. But there's other things that they just completely just left that aren't going to be explored anymore, I guess. I mean, especially the thing with the kid having the Force at the end. What the fuck was that? What should JJ do now? Create a new franchise or do a new Cloverfield type thing? I don't mean Cloverfield specifically, but create something new like that. He did just sign this big deal for like $300 million. So I'm assuming... I think JJ's best as a producer. I wish he had produced these new films and not directed or written any of them. He produces the new Mission Impossible movies. He was involved with bringing Brad Bird into it and Christopher McQuarrie. He produced the Cloverfield movies. He's produced very good television. I think JJ's a very good producer. I think he should hire other directors and kind of give them ideas and let them run with things. I don't think he should be the director of these things. He's a fine television director, but he isn't a very good writer. And he does kind of lack a natural storytelling ability. that one needs to be a filmmaker. He can handle a television show, a pilot, what have you. The pilot for Lost is very good. But yeah, this and a lot of the issues I had with this first Star Trek movie, it's the same sort of thing with Force Awakens, and this reminded me of Into Darkness. It's like a nonstop action movie. It's visually very good, but the screenplay's a fucking mess. And he tries to bring back something old and make it fresh again, and it doesn't work. Wrath of Khan, Return of the Jedi. Oh yeah, he did write Armageddon. He also wrote Regarding Henry, which is a great title. Yeah, I wouldn't mind having getting those guys on here. I'm not really familiar with their stuff, but I wouldn't mind having them on Please Run Live. He doesn't seem to be able to create a story that makes a lick of sense. Yeah, he's not, like I said, he's not a natural storyteller, and he never was. Will you review HBO's Watchmen? Yes, at some point I plan on reviewing the entire season. But that's going to take a long time. So that'll be down the road. This movie was the worst movie I've ever seen. Well, I don't agree with that. This was certainly a sloppy movie. I was shocked by how badly edited it was, but once again, I think that just comes from the nature of reshoots. And it almost felt like a movie they were making up as they were filming. It felt like they didn't have a finished screenplay, and they were just bullshitting the movie as they go along. I think JJ is more concerned with creating a feeling or an aesthetic than he is in telling a narrative with cohesion or having character development. I don't think he's big on that. He's more about cinematic moments that are trying to mimic a certain type of film, but he just doesn't. Yeah, he should really just bring in other writers. I'm shocked they didn't bring in. Where was Lawrence Kasdan? Where was Ryan Johnson? I mean, it's crazy they didn't go to other writers to work on this screenplay. It's insane to me that this was J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio were handed this to do all of this. That just seems insane to me. Yeah, Watchmen's definitely going to get a second season. Oh yeah, no, Last Jedi is a very hard film to follow up because Last Jedi wraps itself up. Last Jedi wraps itself up and is a very standalone film, and it doesn't have a big plot twist at the end. Nobody brings that up. At the end of Empire Strikes Back, you find out that Vader is, Luke's father, and Han Solo gets taken, so that ends on this cliffhanger. The end of Last Jedi, Rey, Poe, and Finn just fly away on the Falcon, and Kylo looks at her. There isn't this big final revelation or this big setup. It's basically just the Resistance is small now, and they have to recoup, so I think that kind of hurt hype. You got to think about the stinger at the end of The Force Awakens with Luke getting, Rey handing Luke the lightsaber. Everybody went into Last Jedi to see what was going to happen. Last Jedi didn't end that way. Last Jedi actually kind of ends as like a standalone movie. You can end that story right there. It had the little boy with the broom, but they didn't follow up on that. The opening scene of this movie has nothing to do with that. It just introduces some MacGuffin. I think Lindelof's established himself as a decent television writer that can write episodic stuff. I don't think he's one of the best writers in entertainment today. I think the screenplay to Prometheus, Cowboys and Aliens reflect that, and I think he wrote a lot of bad screenplays during Lost. And The Leftovers, he wasn't the sole writer on that, and he also had the source material to go off of. And Watchmen, also, he isn't the sole, writer of. He has a writing staff, and he has a universe and world that was already built by another another writer that's brilliant. So I don't totally agree with that. I think Lindelof has strengths, and I also think he has weaknesses. And he has not written a great screenplay, including Tomorrowland, which is also a bad script. So I'm not really sure. I'm still very mixed on Damon Lindelof. I don't think I think he's a guy who's great sometimes. Sometimes he'll write something like in The Leftovers, you're like, this is brilliant. And then other times you're like, what the fuck are you doing? Seems like The Last Jedi and the Batman v Superman of the franchise, and this was the Justice League panic getting Joss Whedon to make it feel like... I totally agree. That's a great analogous. This does feel like is firing Zack Snyder and bringing Joss Whedon in. Ridley Scott is way more to blame for Prometheus, and Covenant is worse than Prometheus. Well, what about Cowboys and Aliens' shitty screenplay, which is horrible, and only has like a good first 30 minutes? And what about the mediocre screenplay to Tomorrowland, which is good for a half hour and is horrible? Are you saying that Brad Bird and Jon Favreau aren't good? Because those two screenplays are both bad. Unless you like those two very, very bad movies. In particular, Cowboys and Aliens is a really bad movie, and the third act is awful. So I don't know what you're getting at. The worst screen kisses are South Koreans. It's just their faces pushed together. Kathleen Kennedy is the main reason. Well, okay. Well, you should go watch those two movies. Kathleen Kennedy is the main reason the Disney trilogy has no overarching story. She had no vision. She only saw easy money. It does, the people always bring up Kathleen Kennedy. She was more of the accountant, financial end involved with Lucasfilm and Steven Spielberg for years. And people said, Kathleen Kennedy worked on Back to the Future and all that. It's like, well, anybody could have been a producer on Back to the Future or Raiders of the Lost Ark. Steven Spielberg fucking made those movies and envisioned them and came up with all the shit. I could put my name on that and claim I was part of it. But it did feel like these were financial decisions. And she didn't care about it artistically. There was a lack of passion. She was like, well, shit, we're just going to make billions of dollars off this. It's fucking Star Wars. And Bob Iger's even said they don't like the animal. The biggest mistake was making a movie a year. Because with Marvel, you had the source material. So with Marvel, you had thousands of comic books to take storylines from and thousands of characters. You're telling these people that they have to write Star Wars screenplays every year for the next, 10 years? And they're going to make, 30 movies? And everybody just thought it would work out because of Marvel. That's what I remember in 2014. Everybody was like, well, yeah, look at Marvel. It's like, yeah, but that's a huge difference because they did not use the extended universe for this. They did not go to the video games and comic books. They kind of got away with it with Force Awakens and Rogue One, but Solo and this show that, it's starting to blow up in their faces a little bit. And I think, yeah, I don't think there's a Star Wars film planned for next year, right? Or is the Obi-Wan movie coming out next year? If I was them, I would slow the fuck down. Slow down. Don't make another big Star Wars film for a while. Slow it down. I don't think you can do a Star Wars film a year. Because that means you're going to make a movie even if you don't have a story ready to go, and you're going to rush somebody to make the movie. Like this film clearly needed more time for its screenplay and more time to get the movie right. They should have spent another year and a half on this movie. Yeah, they have to slow down. They went way too fast. They shot their wad way too early, and it's backfiring on them. They've really killed this. They haven't killed the brand, but they've cut this brand down to where it was. This brand was way bigger in 2015 than it is now, which you cannot say about Marvel. And Disney is aware of this. And I think it's better to stick to the Disney Plus stuff, The Mandalorian, to television series, to stuff like, do stuff like that. I don't think a main series of films is a good idea. I also think Rian Johnson's trilogy isn't going to happen, and we know that D&D's trilogy is canceled now. At least them doing it. So I'm not really sure. Remember there was going to be the Rian Johnson trilogy? They haven't really been talking about that. Although Knives Out's successful, so maybe they should consider working with Rian Johnson. I don't know. It's all very confusing, isn't it? It's all very weird. Everybody always wants Denis Villeneuve. I don't want another Star Wars movie. If I'm actually being honest, I don't need another Star Wars movie. I don't mind there being Star Wars television shows, because I think you could flesh more stuff out in the writing with that. I can't really think of a Star Wars movie I want to see. I'm burned out on lightsabers and the Force. I'm done. And if they make one, I would rather it be a low-budget movie. I would rather it be like a $80 million film that has nothing to do with Star Wars and the Force. Because this was, they fucked this up. They should have just done more stuff like Rogue One, that was a standalone thing that, kind of connected itself to the other series. I don't think, Solo was a bad idea, and I don't even dislike Solo, it was just a bad idea. This was a bad idea. They really hurt a property that they paid $4 billion for this and they got their money back. But how long is this property gonna last in this form? But they are talking about bringing Kevin Feige in. Let me always say Johnson understands the universe. Like when you watch Last Jedi, like it has this understanding of Star Wars that most people don't have. Like there's nothing he said or did in that movie that nobody who watches any Star Wars movies or reads comics doesn't understand. Star Wars isn't that hard to understand. Why do people act like Star Wars is this complex thing to understand? It's very obvious what Star Wars is. It's very obvious what George Lucas did. We all know what he did. He did Flash Gordon. He did movie serials. He did a comic book. He did all that stuff. I mean, Marvel really is Star Wars in a lot of ways. What Kevin Feige's done with it, it's not complicated. Anime, Gundam, a lot of things have taken from Star Wars. I don't know what the fuck people act like somebody doesn't understand Star Wars. It's like, no, it's just writing a good screenplay and making a good movie isn't easy. It's not understanding or misunderstanding Star Wars. It's sitting down and writing a good screenplay. That's all it is. And having a good filmmaker. It doesn't really have that much to do with Star Wars itself. Luke dies from force Skyping. Yeah, I don't think Star Wars is that complicated. I think it's pretty easy to follow. I mean, midichlorians, I would argue that Rey being able to heal people with the Force is just as fucking stupid as midichlorians. I don't think one's worse than the other, you know? I think that power is just as dumb as that, you know? And at least he stopped talking about midichlorians after Phantom Menace, you know? Solo had bad execution and mediocre scripts. Sequels are just shit. Listen, they need to bring in a whole new group of writers and all that. They need to have a whole writing team that comes up with Star Wars ideas. And they need to, yeah, they need, I mean, I don't know. They just, JJ seemed like a good idea on paper. But now it's like, oh wow, JJ probably wasn't the best choice just because of this paid off. It's fantasy. Disney treats it like an action film. Look at Empire Strikes Back. There's little in the way of plot and ton of character world building. Oh fuck you. Last Jedi has world building. What, Canto Bite? Yeah, what brilliant world building. The Last Guardians and a casino planet war. That's just such brilliant world building. Luke hanging out on an island with Rey. That's such good world building. Them in a ship going in slow motion while they're being chased. The world felt huge. All three of these movies have had bad world building. Force Awakens had no world building, which made it very tough for Rian Johnson to build on that world because New Hope has brilliant world building and there's no world building in Force Awakens. They just throw in things. And it all got exposed by this movie how small this was. Yeah, the great world building of Canto Bite. Fuck it, I'll do what I want, J.J. Abrams. Oh, I hope that's not true, that Kathleen Kennedy just has a group of female writers that get to do whatever the hell they want and they have no experience. If that's true, that's fucking horrible. I can't believe that's true. That sounds ridiculous. Let's look at Joker real quick and see if it's made any more money. No, it's still at $1,060,000,000. I mean, yeah, Joker's a bigger success story than this movie. It's crazy. Fucking crazy. It's Star Wars, man. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it shouldn't be a feminine thing, and it shouldn't be a masculine thing. Star Wars was never masculine. It was never feminine. It kind of always had a balance of both. It should be a group of male and female writers all working on this stuff and pitching ideas. I don't know why Kathleen Kennedy has this agenda with women. It's stupid. Star Wars always had a female side to it. It's not like that was ignored in the Star Wars movies just because there wasn't a female Jedi in the original. Even though Leia technically had the Force, so not even that really. At least from a gender standpoint, Star Wars was fairly inclusive. I just think keeping things simple would have been a good idea. I think they overcomplicated these new movies. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen the sequel to Solo. I agree. I'd have liked to have seen where that went with Darth Maul and all that, where it ended. I really liked the Maltese Falcon half hour at the end. Yeah, it has this weird gimmick where they think because they had a few movies do well with the women, but now you look how Charlie's Angels bombed, and that these female reboots of franchises aren't always working, or these female-driven action films. I mean, John Wick is the big action franchise right now for what it is, and it's Keanu. I don't know why. And also, I hate to be this way. It's going to sound sexist. It's stupid watching small women beat up big guys. Look at the Charlie's Angels chicks in the trailer. They're all like a twig. Like Kristen Stewart weighs like 105 pounds. And I'm supposed to believe that she can punch and beat up a guy that weighs like 200 pounds? Like, Ripley didn't punch and beat up people in fucking Aliens. She, like, built a gun flamethrower thing and was smart. Even in Terminator 2, the way Sarah Connor beats up people, she gets, like, a stick. She like... But she still gets overpowered. And I'm not saying a guy can just beat up a bunch of people, too. But, like, yeah, they cast these women that don't have muscle a lot of the time. They're not like you watch that movie Haywire by Soderbergh, and he has that Gina Carano chick, I think's her name, and she's an MMA fighter. You can buy that chick can kill Michael Fassbender. In real life, I could believe that she could kill Michael Fassbender. She's like buff as shit. She's bigger than him, really, and she knows how to fight. She's trained, and when you see her kill him in that movie, it's like, yeah, she looks like she could kill that fucking... Just the way you can believe Arnold Schwarzenegger can kill people in a movie. She looks like a fucking badass. But they keep casting these like little petite women because they still want them to have sex appeal, but yet they want them to be badasses, but they can't be progressive enough to not make them sex objects. Yeah, don't get me wrong, Gina Carano is fucking sexy. It's weird how she's so muscular but still has this beautiful shape, beautiful woman. But yeah, she's a great example. Like, she looks like she could kick your ass, even in Deadpool, where some of these women they cast, yeah, they're little. They're little. I'm not especially saying... I'm not saying like Rey, because Rey has the Force, but other movies. And I don't know. It's just weird because it's like if some super scrawny guy was in an action film and he was beating everybody up. It looks weird visually. It doesn't work. But they do it with women. They try to cast these sexy, thin women to be badasses, and it looks like they've never worked out. Like, remember Emily Blunt in Edge of Tomorrow? She looked like she was a badass, you know? You could tell she was working out. That's all I'm saying. I think Kristen Stewart's sexy, yes. Have for quite a while. I really like her. Like, she's got that dead-eye stoner chick, I don't give a fuck face that you just want a blowjob from. You just want that dead eye look when you're getting a blowjob. You know she just doesn't care. Posted a quote from Kathleen Kennedy about a writing staff. Emil Clark as Sarah Connor. Well, even Emil Clark as Sarah Connor wasn't like... It's just the way they write this stuff. It's just miscasting is all it is. It's not the idea of a woman being a strong character. It's just the writing and miscasting. If I was Bob right now, I'd be thinking about Kevin Feige, let him do whatever the fuck he wants with all my franchises because the numbers speak for themselves. No, the Emperor shooting the lightning out is like Ivan Ooze. It was like a fucking Power Rangers movie. It's fucking hilarious. I couldn't believe it. Why did the lightning look like shit? Yeah, Lena Headey, I agree. You can buy her as a tough chick. Yeah, it's like Charlie's Angels, all three of them. It's like, okay, none of these girls could win a fight with anybody, not even against other women. Oh, for sure. That a muscular woman couldn't beat up a competent male fighter, for sure. But you know, it's a movie. You can let that go a little bit. I can buy into a fantasy of a movie. Yeah, no, the CGI was, like, oddly bad. I was very surprised by how crazy, like... It did remind me of Michael Bay. I've always said J.J. Abrams is like Michael Bay. He's just like a better Michael Bay. But it's still, like, he's still very stylistically and, like, very Michael Bay. Even Christopher Nolan has influence from Michael Bay. If you look at Starby, he's just a better director. Michael Bay's presence is felt through a lot of modern Hollywood, unfortunately. Like, ever since, like, Armageddon, you can feel Michael Bay. I love a Ben Affleck quote on the Armageddon commentary. He said, if Jerry Bruckheimer and James Cameron had a baby, it would be Michael Bay. I think that's very funny and appropriate. Yeah, and all the puppet stuff looked like shit in Rise of the Skywalker. It looked horrible. All these cutesy, horrible puppets. I did not like how that stuff looked. I Am All the Jedi felt exactly like the I Am Iron Man. Hey, good call. Alright, so the story of the weekend here is Rise of the Skywalker has a very disappointing to, I don't know, bad opening weekend. And Disney fucked it up. That's all I can say. Thank you for watching. I'll see you for Box Office Addict 95, where we will be covering the follow-up weekend. And if you listen to Box Office Addict, you're probably an addict yourself. And I'm here to encourage your addictions, not make them any easier for you. In the comment section, tell me what you guys think will be the final domestic total and worldwide total for this movie. But that's all I got. That's all I got for right now, guys. I'll see you. Thank you for talking in the chat. That was a lot of fun.
My friends and we start to ride. Ride all night, yeah, we ride all day. Some may come,